start us off, I'm going to go back to the beginning, a kind of quick history of pressure in espresso brewing. The first espresso machines operated at relatively low pressures. They would boil water, trap that steam, and use that pent-up steam pressure to push the boiling water through coffee. Maybe 1 to 2 bars of pressure was kind of where they were operating, but this meant you could brew coffee quicker than you ever could before, and in part that combination of quick and pressing is where espresso got its name from. Now the big innovation for sort of modern espresso came from Achille Gaggio's machine in 1949. Here he made a massive leap in pressure. Now pressures had been increasing in various innovations in machines running up to this, but no one had gotten near the pressures that he achieved with his spring lever. And here you had a lever that you pulled down, this compressed a big spring, allowed water into a brew chamber, and then when you released the lever, that spring expanding pushed that water through the coffee. And here was the first time that we had enough pressure to generate crema. It was a huge moment and a kind of turning point for espresso. The next leap forward in brew pressure, I would say, came in 1961 with one of the most interesting and innovative machines, which is the Fiamma E61. Now, amongst its many innovations was the fact that it used an electric pump, and this provided a constant pressure to brew espresso at, unlike the springs, because as the spring expands, it exerts less force. Here, we suddenly had 9 bars of pressure as a kind of new constant in espresso brewing. The next big leap, I would say, was probably the introduction of pressure profiling. I think that can be mostly credited to La Marzocco's Strada machine that came out around 2009-2010. Here, it still had an electric pump, but it was a gear pump, and you could send a variable voltage and it would spin and produce varying kind of pressures. And suddenly you could create whatever pressure you wanted to, whenever you wanted to in the shot. This was new, this was interesting, and the phrase pressure profiling came into the collective conscious of coffee brewing people. It was an interesting time, a time of experimentation, of discovery, and also enormous frustration. Because you can change one small part of a pressure curve of an espresso shot and you will taste a different tasting espresso. And that's initially exciting, but soon it's difficult to know if you're making your espresso better or just different. I think now we have a more measured approach that comes with a little bit more understanding of what's been going on inside our espressos, and we know a little bit more about how to use pressure to achieve better and more consistent espresso. I do quickly want to talk about 9 bars of pressure. This is the norm, this is the standard, this is what most espresso machines are set to from factory in terms of commercial machines for sure, but why is it 9 bars? I did once hear that this was considered to be the average of a spring profile, right? A spring lever will peak higher than 9 and will slowly decline as the spring expands in a kind of linear fashion. And someone said 9 was the average. Maybe. What seems more likely is that someone did the work and worked out that there's a peak of flow at 9 bars. You can read about this in, I think, Illy's book, which is The Science of Quality, and also Scott Rayo's book, which was an e-book about espresso making. If you do a simple test, you take a fixed dose of coffee at a fixed grind setting, and you brew, let's say, for 30 seconds. And you brew at 7 bars, 8 bars, 9 bars, 10 bars, 11 bars. What you'll see is that as you increase in pressure, more liquid gets through that coffee puck in a fixed amount of time. The flow increases until you cross the 9 bar threshold, and actually the pressure of the water starts to compact the cake, making it harder to get through again, and your flow starts to decrease again. So 9 bars is about the peak of flow for most espresso machines. This makes sense. This is the setting that would allow you to grind the finest for a given kind of flow rate. So that's where 9 bars comes from, most likely.